What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. Another week, another round of Apple software updates, and this past week was nothing too special in terms of iOS and iPadOS 15.5, but we're going to talk about the latest beta and how things are running. After that, we're going to discuss the latest Apple Watch Series 8 leaks that finally make it seem worth the upgrade. We're going to talk about details on the upcoming Apple Car, a major security vulnerability affecting all M1 Macs, the reason Elon Musk slammed Apple, and more. And as always, if you guys want to stay updated with all things Apple, make sure to click that subscribe button down below so you don't miss next week's episode. All right, so let's first start off by talking about the latest software, which is iOS 15.5 Beta 4. And we just learned that iOS 15.5 is going to reintroduce an Apple Music API that was used by third-party music players that would allow users to change the playback speeds of songs that rely on Apple Music. So this is a feature that was removed, for developers, of course, in iOS 15.4 and got a lot of backlash in the developer community. So Apple listened and is bringing it back with iOS 15.5. You can see here that post from somebody at Apple. So you'd love to see Apple listening to feedback and responding so quickly. So that is one thing you can expect to see with 15.5 once the final version rolls out. We also have a fix for shortcuts, specifically in Beta 4, because Beta 3 would break shortcuts that used the match text action, and now that has been fixed here in Beta 5. Those shortcuts now run properly. There's also an issue related to AirTags going on right now with iOS 15.5 Beta 4 and also previous versions of iOS, including 15.4 and 15.4.1, and that is related to phantom alerts. So according to the Wall Street Journal, some iPhone users have begun receiving alerts, often in the middle of the night, for AirTags that might not be in their path at all. So an Apple spokesman did confirm that this is an issue and that they're aware of it, and they said that these alerts could have resulted from, quote, an iPhone receiving area Wi-Fi signals that temporarily confused its location services. Pretty strange. So he does say that a potential fix would be to go into settings, privacy, and location services, and just switching that toggle on and off while Wi-Fi is enabled. So he also said that in more densely populated areas, AirTags owned by others nearby could inadvertently trigger unwanted alerts. And we don't know for sure just yet, but the latest AirTags firmware update could be to blame for these phantom alerts. We'll have to wait and see if Apple pushes out another update pretty soon. There were also a few minor changes in the code in Beta 5 as pointed out on Twitter, but really nothing worth spending too much time on as there's nothing we can actually see on the front end on our iPhones. And as far as the release notes go, really nothing has changed at all since Beta 3, or really since 15.5 Beta 1, where we heard about universal control being broken if you're not on the beta on your Mac and iPad, but we haven't really seen anything change over the past few betas in terms of the release notes. I did also want to give a brief update on the 15.5 Beta 2 firmware update for the Studio Display for the three of you out there who own that. So it has finally fixed the webcam quality issue. For me, it was not fixed in Beta 1, but Beta 2 did finally fix it, and the image quality is now like 10 times better. Now, as far as the performance goes, as I've said in the past couple of betas, there's really no change at all in the performance. Performance has been fine for me since Beta 1, so I would not expect anything to change for really any of you here on Beta 4. Everything should remain about the same as it was in Beta 3 and Beta 2. Now, some people have mentioned issues with the 120 Hertz in third-party applications, but that has been fixed since 15.4. So you should not be having issues with that, relating to ProMotion in third-party applications. If you are, it should be fixed in 15.5 when you eventually update to that. And it's pretty much the same deal with the battery life. I'm not going to spend too long on here because it's exactly the same as it was in Beta 3. So no changes to battery life. It's still right on par with 15.4.1 in my experience, at least on my 13 Pro Max. All right, so now let's talk about what is next for Apple. So next up is going to be iOS 15.5 Beta 5, and that is most likely coming next week, most likely on the 10th. Apple has been loving those Tuesday releases, so I would expect to see that once again on the 10th, maybe even the 11th at the latest. Now, if Beta 5 has an A at the end of the build number, that means that we should probably expect to see an RC the week after on the week of the 16th, which would mean we'd see 15.5, the final release, most likely on the week of the 23rd. So that is the projected release schedule for iOS 15.5. And like I mentioned earlier in the week, I don't think we're going to see a 15.4.2 if we do not see it next week. If we don't get a 15.4.2 next week, I don't think we're going to see that at all. I think Apple's just going to wait and push out 15.5 a couple weeks later. But of course, things can always change. If Apple finds some major security vulnerability, they'll push out an update as soon as possible. So we'll have to wait and see on that. So now let's move on to my favorite segment of Apple Weekly, and that is the latest Apple news from this past week. So let's kick things off with the Apple Watch Series 8, since we haven't really talked too much about that here on Apple Weekly. So we now have some new details surrounding the most anticipated feature of this Apple Watch, which is body temperature readings. And here's what Ming-Chi Kuo recently tweeted out. Apple canceled body temperature measurement for Apple Watch Series 7 because the algorithm failed to qualify before entering EVT stage last year. I believe Apple Watch 8 in the second half of 2022 could take body temperature if the algorithm can meet Apple's high requirements before mass production. The challenge in implementing precise body temperature measurement is that skin temperature quickly varies depending on the outside environments. A smartwatch can't support core temperature measurement in terms of hardware, so it needs an excellent algorithm to work together. Samsung is facing this challenge as well, and unlike previous media reports, I think Samsung Galaxy Watch 5 in the second half of 2022 might not support body temperature measurement due to algorithm limitations. So it appears that Apple is on track to have this body temperature measurement included in the next Apple Watch, but it's still not a guarantee. Now, I do think that it's going to happen. You know, the Series 7 was basically just a better looking Series 6, so I find it hard to believe that Apple would do the same thing with the Series 8. I think we get this new feature and more, but of course, time will tell. Now let's discuss a pretty interesting security vulnerability that is currently affecting several Apple products, including the M1 Max, the iPhone 12, and more. So a team of researchers at two different universities have demonstrated the first ever DMP, or data memory dependent prefetcher, vulnerability that they're calling augury. This is a vulnerability exclusive to Apple Silicon devices. If exploited, the vulnerability could allow attackers to siphon off at-rest data, meaning the data doesn't need to be accessed by processing cores to be exposed. And this affects Apple's A14 chip, which powers the 4th generation iPad Air and iPhone 12 series, along with M1 and M1 Max devices. And you can pause the video to read the specifics about this vulnerability and how it works, but all you need to know is that it has been discovered, but not actively exploited as far as we know. And the good news is that Apple is also aware of this and should be working on a fix via software very soon. And speaking of Macs, Apple is now giving you less on trade-ins than ever before. And not just Macs, but also iPads and Apple Watches. So you can see the list of updated trade-in values compared to what they were just last week. And this is even more of a reason to just use eBay or Facebook Marketplace when trying to sell an Apple product to upgrade to the next, because Apple's trade-in values are now officially robbery. I mean, you can get so much more on eBay for these devices. At least iPhones were not affected with this recent price cut, but still unfortunate for those who rely on trade-ins. And speaking of money, Elon Musk just recently slammed Apple for their 30% App Store fee. So he said this on Twitter in response to a tweet about the topic. He said, quote, "Apple's store is like having a 30% tax on the internet. Definitely not okay. Literally 10 times higher than it should be." Classic Elon, right? So, Elon is not the first or the last person to have an issue with Apple's high fee percentage for their App Store. But, what do you think about this? Do you think it should be lower than 30%? Or are people just, saying this now because Apple has such a big market share? I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about that. Anyways, let's move on to some more positive news, somewhat related to the App Store. And that's because PS3 games are now able to be played on a Mac. So a PS3 emulator called RPCS3 has just recently been released for the Mac, and with the help of Rosetta 2, you can now play PlayStation 3 games on your Mac. And I have to say, after playing around with this for a little bit, the games play better than I expected on my M1 Ultra Mac Studio and also on my M1 Max MacBook Pro. Now, it's definitely not perfect and has a ways to go, but for an initial release, it's actually pretty solid, and I love being able to play PS3 games on my Mac now. I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that. So if you're interested in playing these PlayStation 3 games, I will link to this program in the description down below. It's pretty awesome. And then finally, we have to talk about some awesome news surrounding the Apple Car. And that's because a longtime Ford exec has just recently joined Apple to help with their upcoming car project. That, and we also have some insight on how their self-driving system might work. Now keep in mind, we are still years away from this product being a reality. Now rumors are saying we could see the Apple Car as early as 2025, but odds are that's more likely going to be 2026, 2027. But still, that's really not too far away for something so massive. So according to Bloomberg, Apple just recently hired Desi Yu, I'll just call her Desi Yu because I cannot pronounce that last name, for their car project, and she had worked at Ford since 1991, most recently serving as the Global Director of Automotive Safety Engineering. And before that, she helped oversee engineering of interiors, exteriors, chassis, and electrical components for many Ford models. She joins multiple other high-profile individuals who have also worked at Ford, along with Tesla and BMW. So it seems that Apple is very serious about making a Tesla and a Lucid competitor, but obviously to compete, they're going to need a better self-driving system, and that's exactly what they appear to be working heavily on. Here's a little bit more intel about that self-driving system according to Patently Apple. So they say, quote, "A route towards the destination may be identified and the vicinity of the destination may be reached. At this point, finger-grained guidance regarding the actual stopping point of the vehicle may be needed. The method may further comprise detecting using one or more sensors, one or more signals generated by an individual authorized or permitted to provide guidance with respect to movements of the vehicle. For example, in some cases, the individual may gesture towards an intended parking space in a parking area and combine the gesture with a voice command, 'Park over there.' In another embodiment, the individual may use a touch-sensitive interface, such as a screen of a mobile phone or a tablet device like an iPhone or iPad, to mark an intended stopping point, trace a path towards a particular area or stopping point, or indicate an intended direction of motion via a virtual joystick interface. In some embodiments, the signals may comprise a voice command using Siri to indicate landmarks or signs which may be visible from the vehicle, such as the equivalent of 'park near the gardening supplies entrance' or 'park near the cafeteria entrance.' So that sounds absolutely insane and so futuristic to say right now, but that's actually going to be a reality in just a few years. So I don't know about you guys, but I am extremely hyped for this Apple Car. And you know, this has always felt like a pipe dream, but now it's starting to seem more and more real as the years go on, and constant hires are just the writing on the wall of this actually coming to fruition. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is the latest batch of Apple news from this past week, along with some more details on iOS 15.5. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit more news centric, a little bit more news heavy this time, but that's just because these betas on 15.5 are honestly quite boring. So I cannot wait for iOS 16, as I know you guys cannot. We're only a month away from that, so cannot wait for that. But if you guys enjoyed this video, as always, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up, and also make sure to subscribe for more videos just like this one. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.